Okay, so good morning and welcome to this e-Memoir session. This morning we're looking at T-levels, getting ready for 2019. We're joined by Gordon McAlpine of e-Memoir, who's also a consultant independently, and Rhys Davies, Vice Principal at East Riding College. We like to keep these sessions as interactive as possible, so I'd encourage you to use the question or the chat facility. If you've got a question you'd really like to get across to us using your microphone, just let me know and I'll be happy to activate it. You'll all receive a copy of the video recording along with the slides. And if you're watching this now on a video recording, please get in contact with us. I'm going to hand over to Gordon McAlpine. Thanks, Gordon.
Yeah, thanks very much, Marek, and good morning, everybody. I trust the sun's shining where everybody is. I'm based in the Yorkshire area, near York. And it's been a pretty splendid morning so far, so hope it's good where you are. And looking down the list, Marek and Rhys, it looks as if we've got representatives from all over the country. All the regions are represented this morning, and that's good to see. I was saying earlier on, if we did this as a conference, it would be a pretty large room that we'd have to find. But hopefully by the end of this session, we'll be able to put people in touch with each other and make it more personal, more interactive than just a sort of one-off recording. My own background, very briefly, is I came into further education. Well, it seems like, well, it is decades ago, and I've been working with Bijka Zmarczyk in a variety of different forms from about 10, 15 years ago. But my main professional background is as was a director of student services and assistant principal in a college not a million miles removed from you, Rhys.
Yeah, and, probably this office.
Probably that office, but you're in a new campus.
Yeah, true.
I worked in Beverly College, which is now East Riding College, and had a great time there, really enjoyed it. And my main focus was on responding to the needs of the local community, and it seems to be still a very pertinent aspect of the job role that you'll be in, Rhys, and look forward to further discussions with you. So welcome to all our regular subscribers and perhaps new colleagues participating for the first time. This is a bit of a new venture for us in terms of we're introducing to you this morning what we're calling a kind of suite of webinars, a series of webinars that will take us well beyond this one and could in effect run as a series over the next couple of years up to 2019, getting ready for the introduction of T-levels. Now, for those of you like myself who have been in the further education sector for some time, it'll probably seem a bit like Groundhog Day. Have we been here before? And I suspect that some of you will be thinking, well, is this a new initiative? Or is it something that will be sustained beyond 2017 and up to 2019 and beyond? Can you move on to the next slide, Marek? Thanks. Yeah, is it the start or the end of a journey? And I was just thinking the other day about where we've been before in terms of initiatives to do with vocational education and training. And some of you will be feeling familiar with titles that have become part of folklore in the world of further education. And you think, well, have we been here before? What is significantly new about technical levels, or T-levels as we'll give them the shorthand version? And I was just thinking about it, going back to YTS, Youth Opportunities Programs, TVEI, Education Achievement Zones, or Action Zones. Oh, the list is endless. Diplomas, NVQs, GNVQs, and we're now reaching the world of trying to amalgamate and in fact consolidate a number of initiatives into one identifiable set of proposals, programs that will be recognized by not only the learners but by employers. And we've also had a variety of funding agencies involved in this process over the years, going back to the Manpower Services Commission, Further Education Funding Council and so on, and now the Education and Skills Funding Agency. So a number of people have been involved in a dialogue about trying to improve the quality and indeed the status of vocational and education training qualifications. So there's been a variety of initiatives behind the scenes, and the purpose of today is really to try and set the scene for you and a reminder as to where we've come from, where we're at now, and indeed what is the main action points over the coming months for providers. So it's a bit of a kind of reflection on those issues. We now have an education, Technical and Further Education Act, which was passed just recently before Parliament broke up for the general elections. So there's a certain degree of stability in the system, which no doubt the various political parties will be mulling over and producing ideas and solutions in their manifestos over the coming weeks. But Rhys himself will cover some of the detail from a practitioner's point of view, his take and his college's take on what are the key challenges facing providers over the coming months and indeed beyond that, in terms of trying to, as I said before, produce a sense of stability, a bit of more realistic organisation in terms of the multitude of qualifications that exist for vocational and education training providers, and ultimately what it means to the learners, what it means to those who will be participating and taking advantage of the new technical levels. So we've had the Sainsbury report, we've had the Tomlinson report before that, and so on. And I was just reading in the Times Ed this week an article in the online version of the Times Ed that one commentator pointed out that, and I'll quote, "Yes, we know they're coming, but they're not really on our radar yet." So perhaps after the end of this session, that will be not only on your radar, but you're starting to create an agenda for action for your own institution. So technical levels and what they are, we'll be discussing in general terms this morning, because obviously things will develop as the coming months come along, and the devil will be in the detail, as they say. So there's a lot of work still to be done. So why now? Can you move on, Marek, please? So making technical education work for, and I've only put down three. It could be there's a number of interested stakeholders there and key players in this. So if we go on the premise that what we're doing is for the benefit of the learner, the student, the apprentice, whatever title we want to give to the participants, and obviously for the providers, so that they can plan, they can organize, they can argue their case for proper and sustainable funding over the coming years, and obviously the employers. One of the main driving force behind technical levels in recent months, and indeed before that, is the place of the employer, the place of the economy in this whole process. So that will be key to the planning of further developments in the vocational and education training world, to have an employer-led and economy-led response to what has been identified as a key element in the current strategy to bridge the skills gap. So it's a big challenge now, and also to try and address this artificial divide between A-levels and higher level vocational qualifications, something that I've been involved with and had comments, I've been involved in comments back to central government about this for a number of years now, in terms of parity of esteem between A-levels and vocational qualifications. I think that's a big challenge for us. So the National Skills Strategy, Marek, if we can move on. And can we move on again, Marek? I'm going to come back to this slide at the end. Yeah. So what are the key issues? Technical levels, the qualifications relating to vocational education and training programs. There is a developing national skills strategy, as you know, that the government and whatever political hue that might be over the coming months has to respond to. That in order to be competitive and to be productive, we need a highly educated, highly trained and responsive workforce. And I think that is one of the main driving agendas behind the introduction of a new format of vocational education and training programs. I've mentioned the parity of esteem with A-levels. So when we're out there promoting vocational programs in whatever format it will take, both full-time and in the work-based learning programs, it's understood by the marketplace. There's a big development in regional and the place of regional and local planning now. We've been there before as well. I was involved in the strategic area reviews 10 years ago when the issue was looked at in terms of consolidating what we know, the assessment of data, the assessment of the needs of employers. We've now gone through a recent exercise again with area-wide reviews, which is looking at the key elements needed in proper and sustainable regional and local planning. Employer engagement, another key issue. How meaningful is that in your area? Are employers fully engaged in the process? Do they fully understand the education and training programs that providers are putting out there? Proper strategic and operational planning at provider level. It is just no longer 1 year plan or even a 2 year plan. Can you look at things beyond that period of time? Can you look at 5 to 10 year strategies that you know can be sustained so there's a degree of solidity and permanence to the whole process? The quality of the program and designs and delivery. Again, that will be a key element when you're planning the development of your programs over the coming months. And obviously we've set up now the Institute for Apprenticeships, which Rhys will talk about later on, in terms of assuring that there are proper standards, they are consistent across the country, and indeed meet the needs of all the key stakeholders mentioned earlier on. Apprenticeships, massive developments there. Are the targets appropriate? Is the funding there beyond 2017 and indeed beyond 2019? The marketing side for providers will be another key challenge for providers in terms of meeting the needs of the learners and understanding that there is a need now, I think, to be more collaborative in the provision of careers education, information, advice and guidance. Can you get access to the learners pre-16 and at 16 that is meaningful? And it's just not a series of talks, just not a series of conferences or demonstrations. It actually gets into the fabric of the curriculum pre-16. Thanks, Marek. And continuing then, and you'll be familiar with the need for proper and sustainable funding and resources. The AOC this morning has produced its own manifesto, and just taking a couple of quotes out from that, and the AALP will be the same. It's saying that there's a need to allow time for the widespread reforms to bed in, whilst working in partnership with colleges and training providers to ensure that the system meets employers and apprentice needs. And to incentivize, my second quote from the AOC manifesto is to incentivize local collaboration between colleges and schools to ensure a comprehensive offer which spans A-levels, applied general qualifications, apprenticeships, T-levels, and transition and access provision. So everybody involved in this process is probably saying the same thing. We need a commitment from central government that the developments will have a permanence and a sustainability attached to it. So regular and appropriate CPD will be needed for staff to make sure that the skills we're transmitting to and providing for the learners and for the trainees and for the apprenticeships are in fact up to speed. They are regular, and that will require institutions to have a reappraisal, I think, of their staff and their staff skills. Progression is another issue there, progression to higher education, so that universities, higher education institutions will not only see the relevance but appreciate the relevance of vocational education and training programs. Standards, quality assurance and the role of Ofsted. Again, another key issue that will need to be addressed by providers and by their partners in the coming months ahead to make sure that when inspection takes place that everybody is assured at a national level that there is consistency across the piece, and that the quality assurance processes are embedded into your planning. So the overview really in terms of T levels, just in a couple of headline issues, is about a radical review and overhaul of the current vocational education and training programs so that they make sense to the key stakeholders out there, and it's just not a mishmash of the hundreds of qualifications that exist at the moment. There's a progression route that is understood by the learners and indeed by their parents and by employers. And we're going to cover some of those issues in detail now with Rhys, who's going to look at it from a practitioner's point of view, from a college perspective, taking us back, looking at the issues in a bit more detail. And we'll come back and then review how we might address that as e-Memoir and yourselves as subscribers over the coming months, so that we can exchange good practice, exchange ideas, keep ourselves up to date with those developments, because this is very much a moving feast. There are things happening as we speak which will shape the development of vocational and education training programs over the coming months, and you as providers will need to play a key role in those developments to make sure that they happen in a qualitative way and a responsive way over the coming months. So that's my brief overview. It is a very brief overview of the key issues and the key headline issues. And now Rhys will take you back again through some of the developments in a bit more detail and look at some of the challenges that are facing his institution over the coming months. Thanks, Rhys.
Okay, thanks, Gordon. So yeah, thank you for that overview. I mean, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail with you now in terms of how East Riding College is preparing for these tech levels. Just a little bit on East Riding College itself. We're a rurally dispersed FE college in the East Riding of Yorkshire, with campuses in Bridlington, Beverley and Hull. And in terms of my role here, I'm Vice Principal Curriculum Quality. I've been here now for 2 years. Prior to this post, I was working in a sixth form college in Hull. I was there for 8 years as Vice Principal and Assistant Principal. And then before that, I was working in the school sector, in the 11-18 to 18 secondary sector, and working with a local authority as well, supporting schools on transition. So I've worked kind of all the way through, I guess, from primary up to HE and adult education. So as Gordon described some of the initiatives there over the years, I've seen many of them come and go. I mean, in terms of where we're heading with this, well, you'll see that the slides have changed now to East Riding College slides, and the reason for that is that these are slides that I'm sharing with our curriculum managers at the moment, with our staff, in helping us to prepare for the implementation of the FE Act as it now is. So, and you might recognise some of the slides. I have, I will admit to using some slides from Ofqual, AOC and the DFE, so some of this might look a little familiar to you. And as Gordon said, you know, we are in a period of great unknowns at the moment. The Act has become legislation, but I was actually at a QAA National Conference yesterday, and the keynote speakers couldn't really say a great deal because of this purdah that we're in prior to the election on June the 8th. I think the civil service have probably just gone on shutdown for the next 6 weeks, and there doesn't seem to be a great deal happening in terms of any policy initiatives or working through the detail, obviously with the focus being on the election, and then after that, of course, it's going to be on Brexit. I think that was, you know, obviously the reason why the government wanted this to become legislation before the close of Parliament. So it does show a commitment by them to get this on the statute books and to get moving with this, and we'll see the detail unfold, I'm sure, over the summer months. So if I just go back to the context then, to the tech levels, well, of course, they had the birth in the Sainsbury Review of 2015 and 16. The challenge given to that body was to grow the economy and improve productivity, and from that review emerged 4 principles. You'll see 2 of the bullets there refer to the importance played on employers and the part that they will have in driving this agenda now, and of course we're seeing that coming through in the new apprenticeship standards, but it's also there quite clearly in the tech levels, in the classroom-based vocational education delivered in post-16 providers. I'll just say something briefly at this point. I will come back to this in a few moments, but that second bullet there is what Gordon was referring to as this parity of esteem between A-levels and advanced level vocational qualifications. This we know has been going on for many years, and I think this is a real challenge. It is a big ask. In our position as an FE college with some of our partner schools, particularly where those partner schools have sixth form provision of their own, we do find that when you talk about apprenticeships as an alternative to A-levels, that's okay, but when you get into the territory of classroom-based vocational education on a level with A-levels, that's where conversations can become a little touchy, a little difficult. You know, and schools who are selecting pupils in year 10 as being their sixth form pupils based on their academic ability and their work ethic, you know, in terms of them doing A-levels, that's got to change. So we'll see how that unfolds over the next few months, but it is a big ask, that, and it's one that will require post-16 providers, whether sixth form colleges, independent providers, FE colleges, working very closely with schools on that one. Okay, so a little bit on the background there. If we could move it on, Marek, to the next slide, please. Okay, so just in terms of the background again, I've put a couple of quotes in there. The first one from Nick Bowles, as was the Minister of State for Skills in 2016. So he laid out his plans in the post-16 review of the summer 2016 for changing vocational provision. And of course, he started from a bleak view of the sector. It won't be the first time that any minister's painted a bleak view of the sector, and of course, from that, the need for change. It's interesting to read as well there that Nick Bowles refers to the changes that have come our way, and the fact, as he saw it, that those changes didn't embed because the sector didn't have time to deal with change as it came through. But it's quite ironic, therefore, that we're sort of, you know, just getting over the Wolf review and the changes from that, and we've managed that, and then another review comes along and another set of changes. So there is an irony in there, but I will try my very best not to be cynical. I'll try and be on my best behaviour and give a very objective professional view as to where we're going. So to be fair to the government, it's not all talk. They did back up their intentions, as I'm sure you're aware, with the spring budget of 2017, where the Chancellor announced £500 million each year from 18-19, and there was a clear commitment to using this funding for the extra 460 hours, whatever it's going to be, in over that 540 for all 16 to 19-year-olds to get onto 19 hours of study per year. This is bringing us into line, of course, with a lot of our international competitors, the likes of Germany and countries in the Far East that do give that amount of time to their vocational education for 16 to 19-year-olds. How that money will be spent is one of those unknowns. There's the current thinking is that, you know, we're talking about 3 months work experience as a requirement for young people on these technical programs. I think maybe employers may see more of that money than post-16 providers might see, but that again remains to be seen, because that work experience has got to be found from somewhere, and that again is another big ask. So yeah, it seems like the government are sure this time that this is going to be the real deal, and Lord Nash lays it out at the bottom quote there, that this should take us into a whole new sort of landscape for the sector. Okay, so next slide, please. All right, so just getting a little bit further now into the Technical and Further Education Act, as it now is. So from the skills plans, this legislation does support the findings of the Sainsbury Review to rationalise the vocational education. There are currently around 20,000 courses with, I think it's about 160 awarding organisations. So the hope there is that the Act will streamline that and bring much needed simplicity and clarity to the system. The Institute of Apprenticeships, as it currently is called, will become the Institute of Apprenticeships and Technical Education, and their role is to regulate the vocational sector. I think sort of aiming for all provision really to be aligned with the new apprenticeship standards. The financial context, it has to come up somewhere. There it is in point 2. So this creation of an insolvency regime, which means that technically now an FE college can go bankrupt. The government is no longer the banker of the last resort. But of course, that shouldn't happen post area-based reviews that were meant to ameliorate the risk of insolvency. So the intention of the area reviews, of course, was to put the sector on a much firmer footing, moving forward from a kind of financial point of view. With something in there too about the adult skills budget and the way in which colleges and LEPs will need to work more closely in terms of sharing that adult education budget at regional level. And finally, the Baker clause. This came from Lord Baker, of course, who is overseeing the UTC programme and the concerns that he has about UTCs not recruiting to full capacity. And basically, this is putting the onus on schools to ensure that post-16 providers get full access to pupils aged 13 to 18. And again, we'll have to see how that transpires. I mean, that could be a real game changer for the sector if it means that we do have full access and we can explore those vocational options with all students, not just the ones that schools have selected for post-16 providers to see. And the latest thinking on that, as I understand it, is that Ofsted will have a quality assurance role there, that when they inspect schools, they will be asking to see the school's policy and procedures on allowing that access to post-16 providers, and they'll be checking that through, obviously, in their inspection, talking to students and talking to partner institutions. Okay, so move on to the next slide, please, Marek. So here's the 2 routes. The emphasis here is on the difference in the types of qualifications, those that prepare learners for further study and those that prepare them for employment. So you can see from this DFE slide, the left-hand route is the academic route and the right-hand route is the technical route. So the thinking is that at the age of 16, students will decide which route they are going to go down, whether it be the academic, through their GCSEs and technical awards at key stage 4, into possibly a transition year if they're not ready for level 3. I'll say more about that in a moment. To A-levels and applied general qualifications to HE. That's the traditional academic route. The technical route, as you can see, there's GCSEs, technical awards leading into college-based technical education at level 3, including a placement in industry, or employment-based technical education, such as an apprenticeship with one-day release, onto higher education technical qualifications at levels 4 and 5, or a degree apprenticeship and higher apprenticeships. On the academic route, we know for some time when this was all under review, the government initially weren't too keen on the idea of applied general. Well, that's now been approved. That was approved a couple of months ago. And what that means is that post-16 providers can combine smaller vocational qualifications with A-levels. So we do have such an hybrid model here where student might do, say, 2 A-levels with a BTEC certificate, so that's still permissible. And that'll be part of the academic pathway. Applied general qualifications will be smaller. The tech levels will be larger, and they will sit in the technical option route. They're the larger vocational qualifications that require those technical vocational resources like the engineering workshops or the construction workshops or the hair and beauty salons, etc. The technical pathway has 2 modes of learning. It can either be school, college-based or employer-based, and with some alignment between the 2. I mentioned the transition year, so this will be for students that are not ready at the age of 16 to progress onto a level 3 provision. Talking to Pearson last week, I found out that their level 2 technicals, the thinking is behind those at the moment is that they can be undertaken over 2 years. So that transitionary year may be a transitionary 2 years. There might be a possibility of doing that. And that transition year will be made up of a main vocational qualification at level 2, plus English, maths, and work experience. And work experience could take up a sizable chunk of that time. And of course, it can include traineeships as well, if appropriate for that student. And that student can then progress on from a traineeship into further study or employment. And then finally at the top there you can see the bridging provision circle where appropriate. So this is intended, the government accepts that, you know, asking pupils in year 10, at the end of year 9, year 10 to embark on one of these options and to stay there isn't realistic. It will close down options, and they want to obviously protect that flexibility and those options as students progress through the route. So if somebody starts off on an academic option and decides after doing A-levels that they want to move over to the technical qualifications, there will be bridging provision put in place. And my understanding of that provision at the moment, again, this is very early days, but I understand that if you're moving from academic to technical, that bridging provision will be primarily work skills type qualification, as we're familiar with from the past, and moving from technical to academic, if you go the other way, that will be primarily made up of study skills to prepare learners for those higher level academic qualifications. Okay, so that pretty much is as the two routes exist at the moment. So if we can just move the slide on, Marek, please, for the next one. So this is just a bit more information on the technical routes from Ofqual. You can see reference there to the standards, the first bullet point. That operational standards will underpin all of this technical education, and those operational standards, as I've explained, will come from employers. Third bullet down talks about clustering occupations that share knowledge, skills and behaviour requirements. I'll look at those in a moment. On the technical qualifications, down at the bottom, first bullet, occupational map from the basis structure of the new technical quals. What does it say there? So there may be a number of qualifications per route, each covering a cluster of occupations, and so basically within each route there'll be a cluster of qualifications or main qualifications which awarding bodies will be bidding for and developing. And the third bullet there, right at the bottom under technical qualifications, this is one of the most controversial things to come from the skills plan and the Sainsbury review and this legislation. This idea of, you know, a single organisation or consortium of organisations bidding to deliver the qualification for a fixed period of time. So there's all sorts of questions asked around that. You know, if we're reducing the number of awarding bodies, we're trying to simplify. Has it gone too far? What will be the impact, for example, on research and development? And what will be the impact on pricing if there's a lack of competition? And that detail is yet still to come through. Okay, Marek, so next slide, please. If you look at the 15 routes, there they are. Again, I think this was a DFE slide, which some of you may have seen before. So you can see the 15 routes there. The bottom 4 will be delivered primarily through apprenticeships. That's the thinking at the moment. I think what can be noted from these is it's quite arbitrary the way that these have been put together. I'm not quite sure he kind of sat down with a pen and a piece of paper one day and wrote these 15 routes out, but there is a sort of arbitrariness to them, if I can use that word, if there is such a word. Do you notice how journalism, for example, sits with upholstery in the creative and design route? That's an interesting combination. Missing routes, there is a criticism that there that may well be missing routes, and indeed missing occupations from those routes as they stand at the moment. So the Association of Employment and Learning Providers, they did some work on this a little while ago now, but they calculated that about 50% of jobs, 57% of jobs in the nation's economy are outside of the recommendations scope. So there's still some questions about how this will be addressed, and what happens to those sort of niche awarding organisations. Maybe they'll be bidding in consortia for the right to develop qualifications. And what happens to with low-skilled occupations? They don't appear to be appearing in the 15 routes at the moment either. So fruit picking, I don't know, that kind of thing, which is common to these, it's a big sector in the East Riding, up in North Yorkshire. Where does that sit? So this encompasses all technical education at levels 2 to 5. They all sit within, it will all sit within those 15 routes. Okay, so if we just move on to the next one. I've included this slide. This came from Ofqual. This just gives you an example of how providers are mapping apprenticeships to a route, and in this case it's the digital route. So you can see the pathways down there, down the left-hand side, and then you've got your technical, higher, technical, professional, and they're colour-coded by the stage at which these standards are in progress. Some are now finished, others are in the process of being developed, but that's the way that providers seem to be going at the moment, mapping their apprenticeship provision against each of the routes. So there's some work for us to do there. And if we move on to the next slide, so just some panel recommendations. So if we look at the first paragraph there, this is how these tech levels will be made up. So we're looking at a 2-year program at level 3. Those programs will have a common core, which will include a full, which will consist of a technical qualification. English and maths is still there as a condition of funding. If students don't have a grade C at GCSE, they'll still be expected to be working towards that grade C. Digital skills will be in there as well as part of the common core, and a significant work placement. And there might also be some sector-specific learning deemed essential to certain employers. So, for example, a food hygiene certificate, for example, might need to sit in the catering and hospitality route. And on successful completion, a learner would get an overarching certificate which will be made up of those components that sit within the common core. Second paragraph, there's a little bit in there on sort of specialisations. The idea is that 16, 17-year-olds starting out on these tech levels will begin with a broad level of education that will allow progression then onto specialism, probably in the second year. Okay, so if we just keep going, Marit, please, next slide. So an implication of this for colleges and other post-16 providers is the type of assessment, multiple forms of assessment with the tech levels. So, you know, your different forms, whether it's your role play or your traditional written assignment, digital assignments. So the idea is that students have a portfolio of work which is sort of appropriate to the route and the sector that they're hoping to work in. And employers, it talks about employers being in the driving seat here. They're insisting on that we progress with the externally assessed element of these vocational qualifications to make sure that they're credible. Of course, we're already down the road with this, with certain level 3 courses, but also obviously level 2. There's been a lot of work done there on external assessment, so we're going to see more of that as a result of this legislation. And in terms of planning, this is a big thing for us as an FE college, where we do some A-level provision here, but it's very small. And so most of our tutors are familiar with portfolio-based vocational education over 1 or 2 years. And how we therefore prepare our learners for external assessment is going to be a big challenge for us. And I think the issue there is making sure that there's you know, a clear assessment plan put in place, that we are confident of students' ability to pass that external assessment, because if they get, basically they're going to get one resit opportunity at the external assessment, and if they fail it twice, they fail the course. So it's real high stakes stuff, this, and something that we really need to think about in terms of getting students ready, giving them lots of practice of those external assessments, then feeding into our quality assurance processes throughout the year. And as I say, has been absolutely confident that they are ready to sit that external assessment, so that they get every opportunity of passing it. It's not all exams, though, of course. It will depend on the qualification. So external assessment might well be, I don't know, might be a sport. In sport, you might have to do a performing arts. They'll still continue to do a performance of some type, but again, that's going to be externally assessed. Okay, so on to the timing of all of this. On to the next slide. So there we are. So we're currently April 17. The key date here is, if you look at September 19, as it says on this timeline, that's going to be the launch and first teaching of the first routes. And my understanding of that, and again, this might all change after the election, but my understanding at the moment is those two routes will be construction and IT. Those are the two routes at the moment that the government are looking to launch with the tech levels in September 19, construction and IT. And there is a word going around that these might well be trialled in selected colleges. I think sort of DFE have looked at this and see this as quite an ambitious timescale to all of this. So the thinking at the moment is that it might well be trialled selected colleges, but again, after 8th of June, that all might well change again, and it might just become full steam ahead and we work to this timetable. So that's what I know at the moment, folks. Don't know any more. We'll have to wait and see what happens after the election. So I think the last slide, Mamet, please, next one. So the key messages that I'm sending out as VP at East Riding Colleges to our staff, first of all, as I've mentioned, we need to prepare for external assessment. We need to ensure that we've got a clear scheme in place, a clear assessment process in place, that students get lots of opportunities to do mocks, and that they are fully prepared for those external assessments. We are talking to our partner schools about this legislation. They aren't familiar with it at the moment, in particular the Baker Clause and what that might mean. And if that's going to come through and Ofsted are checking their plans for giving full access, the question is, how can we work together as an FE college and a school to ensure that this works for both the school, the college, but most importantly the learners. And then finally, and we're at a very early stage with this, we are talking to the LEP at the moment, our LEP. We're sitting two LEPs, the Humber LEP and the North Yorkshire LEP, and we're talking to them about how we might map our curriculum here against the 15 routes. So, you know, if the tech levels are to be employer-led, then obviously qualifications offered have got to meet local and regional demands. But the 15 routes could be mapped against LMI for any area, either at LEP or maybe regional level, to establish level of demand for the tech levels. We can look at the demand from each individual occupation within each route. So the aim is that the T-level curriculum then is aligned with the needs of local employers and the regional economy. And that can be further through a gap analysis that maps courses to demand in the area. West Yorkshire, there's the consortium of West Yorkshire colleges that are already way on with this work. They did this exercise. It might be worth looking at them. If you Google West Yorkshire Colleges Consortium work on the 15 routes, there is some information online about this. And what they've done for each of their technical routes, they've looked at the breakdown for all occupations within each of those routes and map those against current job numbers in the area. They did a proportionate comparison of job numbers with the national average. They looked at expected growth forecasts in each occupation to 2022. And that's giving them a real steer then as to which tech levels are going to be viable and which are appropriate for their area and which aren't. And so we'll be certainly talking to our LEPs and employers over the months that lie ahead to ensure that we're delivering a curriculum where, you know, those tech levels do have that alignment with the needs of employers in the area. So that's about it, really. I think that's where we're at. That's what we can do. Let's wait and see what happens on June the 8th, and then I'm sure lots more. The devil is in the detail, as I say, and that I'm sure will come through over the summer period. Okay.
Rhys, thanks very much indeed for that whistle stop through some of the key headline issues, which are challenging to say the least. We've had a couple of comments in, which I'm sure you have an empathy for, in terms of, and I think it's from Arlene and Claire, about level 1 and level 2 students. I don't know if you've got those questions or comments on your screen, Rhys.
Having a lot. Yeah.
About what's going to happen to current, foundation level 1 and level 2 students who are not going to get to level 3, and about the real challenge, and it is a real challenge, about getting work experience for over, in her case, 3,000 students, 150.
Absolutely.
Any immediate thoughts on that? Yeah,
I mean, well, level 1 and level 2, that provision is going to continue, but it might well be that, that transition year, that those students are moved on to some sort of supported internship or a traineeship, and that the obvious route for them might well be employment at that stage, and it finishes there. So I'm sure there'll be an acceptance of that, that for some students they do reach their ceiling at that point, and we need to move them into meaningful employment. So again, we'll have to wait and see what transpires in that. But level 1 and 2 certainly, and foundation learning isn't going to go away. Sorry, what was the second point? Oh, about the
regarding the transition year. Yeah. What about those at entry or level 1? Is this a status quo funding issue?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I think it'll finish there, won't it? And I think, that transition year will be a case of moving them into employment through whatever means that's going to be, whether it's a traineeship, whether it's a supported internship. And that work experience is a biggie. I mean, if we're talking 3 months as part of that study program, that's a huge ask. And we'll have to wait and see how that money is going to be spent that was outlined in the budget this year. My understanding of that from people I've spoken to and the reading I've done so far is that a good chunk of that may well be going to employers to open up those work experience opportunities, but we'll see how that looks.
Yeah, and just perhaps a final sort of comment, unless there's any more coming in, Marek. I noticed the comment from Ian regarding which is a curriculum issue and a planning issue, the separation of healthcare and social care is not helpful. These are big issues again, and challenging questions for the Institute in terms of the rationale behind some of those pathways. I had an interesting anecdote the other week there as to who wrote these particular groupings, and I think an individual was tasked at the DFE just to come up with some solutions. I don't think there's been a lot of collective thinking so far, but no doubt this will come out over the coming months as to how the programs and the clusters are actually fully developed to make sense to the employment market. But I take Ian's point, the separation and the clarifications that are needed and solutions to those groupings are needing very, very careful thinking through. Mary, can you go back to my 4th slide, please?
I think there's a comment, the comment there from Arlene as well about, placing foundation students into the workplace without losing employees. It's a really good point, that it really is, and I think the key to that is the relationship between you as a provider and your employers to find those work experience opportunities. So we're currently working with East Riding Council at the moment to find supported internship work experience opportunities for some of our high needs learners. But it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of strong relationships with our employers in order to make that work, and there's no easy answer to that. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it does illustrate, just looking at that particular slide, what do we do next? And part of the rationale behind e-Memoir and its partnership with colleges and providers is to provide a forum, is to bring issues together that make sense, hopefully, and put people in touch with each other about good practice. So what we're intending to do over the coming months, and Marek and Beej will send out more details of this fairly shortly, is to create an agenda for your subscribers and interested parties in terms of what is going on. And so we will cull all the sort of various, gather in all the various key issues through articles and so on. But more importantly, like Rhys, he's a specialist. He's involved in it on a day-to-day basis, as other practitioners will be, is to use that knowledge and that experience to good advantage through e-Memoir. So we'll be getting those specialist inputs from the key players and agencies over the coming months to keep subscribers up to date with what's going on, so that you in turn can then use that material, use those ideas in your organizations internally as a staff development CPD resource. So we really do rely on your participation, and we do welcome and appreciate that. To make just not the webinars themselves interactive, because it's a bit clunky, I know, and there's so many questions, and the ability to answer those questions in 45 minutes to an hour isn't easy. So what we're going to do is gather in some of those comments, put them onto our website, which is being developed at the moment, and almost like an FAQ page for you as subscribers, so that you can use this tool and these resources over the coming months to help not only just inform your own colleagues, but help each other to be more informed and up to speed with what's going on. So as part of the consultancy service we will offer for e-Memoirs is the webinars, obviously, the suite of webinars, which will be unique to and specialise in the development of T-levels and vocational training over the coming months. Beige himself, as you know, as regular subscribers know, is very, very astute at keeping up to date on funding issues. So funding will be a key issue for you, no doubt, and resources over the coming months. So Beige will specialise in that as usual. So that's the kind of package that we're putting together for you, and hopefully you will find it useful and inform us as to what is going on at the sharp end as well. And Rhys, thank you very much indeed for giving us that insight as somebody who's dealing with it on a day-to-day management level. Can't be easy. I don't envy you that task.
Yeah. We like a challenge, don't we?
You like a challenge. Yeah. And I'm sure looking down the list of those subscribers this morning, it ranges from lecturers to MIS staff to consultants to directors of apprenticeships and so on. It's a multitude of titles in there, some of which I'm familiar with, some of which are new to me. But I think the key one will be that if you are tasked by your organization with this particular responsibility or area within your job role, hopefully you'll find our assistance is of use to you in that respect. So some big challenges there, as Rhys has outlined, in terms of getting this show on the road. And hopefully, and perhaps like Rhys, a little bit of cynicism might be creeping in, but I don't mean to, is that if we get the commitment from central government and whatever political shaded hue of politicians come out of the general election, that there is a degree of commonality and understanding of the needs of the learners, the employers, and your local community. Because that's what we're all about, is putting the learners first. So whilst it's economically driven, those learners, I'm sure your mission statements will say this, are at the heart of what we do. So thanks again, Rhys, for that contribution this morning. There'll be more of those contributions over the coming months, and keep us informed, colleagues, as to what your concerns are, what your issues are, and do that through Marek. And we look forward to being in touch with you over the coming months and having a proper and productive dialogue. Thanks very much indeed for listening in.
Excellent. Yeah, just want to thank Rhys and Gordon there for another fantastic session. Some superb inputs there. Again, it's bringing me back up to speed. I know I've had the discussion with Gordon and Rhys offline, so we're starting to build a better understanding. But certainly some of the input that we received from the participants as well there. I think you were starting to come up with some of the same issues or same worries or identifying similar threats that we were as well. So there certainly is a commonality there. I will update this slide to include Rhys's details, and again, I'd encourage you to talk to each other, because again, I say we all want to come together for the benefit of the learners here. So I'll make sure you get the details. But again, thank you very much, all. And I say we'll be keeping you informed of the upcoming sessions as we start to break down some of these areas and start to look at some of the specificities. So fantastic. I'm going to start the recording.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, just as you're saying that, Marek, I think that's important. You can take each one of those headings, each one of those issues, challenges or whatever, and break it down into sort of meaningful, hopefully meaningful operational and strategic issues. And that will be the format for the future webinars, is to take each of those issues in turn, so that when you put them all together, hopefully you get a better holistic view of the whole development, because it's a big issue just to cover in a one-off. I'm always confident, I'm sure Rhys is as well, is that the sector, whether it be colleges, independent providers, local authorities, and so on, have always been extremely flexible and adaptive, sometimes under stress and strain, but we've always come out good. And I think that's the thing that will keep us going over the coming months.